Just because it's such a weird.
All right. Hi, everybody. We've been having a conversation about sewage water, and what's in it. So we'll go on from that, though. It was a very interesting conversation. Hi, everybody. This is Joanne Eisen with Reach the Unlimited. I'm back again for another exciting conversation and week. And I would like to introduce my host, Adrienne Cobb, who you have seen before and is a very dear friend, and I love her to death. Adrienne, thank you for being here with me.
Not to death. You can love me, just not to death. I'm having anxiety about death right now, so not that. Let's
oh, no, okay. It's true. Yeah. Watch your words. Watch your words. You know what? We're laughing now, but and it doesn't need to be a really hard subject or serious subject, but it really is a very serious subject. What we do with it, we can make it lighter and, try to help people. But narcissism is a very serious and real thing in our world. And a lot of people are affected by it. And a lot of people portray those traits of being a narcissist. All of us have some point in our life been affected by a narcissist. But the most insidious, I think, thing about it would be when you have a narcissistic parent, and how does that affect children, and how do they go through life and cope with life? And that's going to be our topic today. And I'm going to let you start, because you had sent me an article and also 6 signs of how you know you're being raised by a narcissist. So we're going to just kind of cover these topics and see where they go.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So I'm Adrienne Cobb, and I'm founder of My Wild Magic. And thank you so much, Joanne, for having me on your show. I love doing these Facebook Lives with you, or these talks. So the reason I wanted to kind of talk with everyone about this today is really from the avenue actually of conspiracy theories. So that's actually kind of the angle from which I'm looking at this. And what happened for me personally is I'm more of an emotional thinker. So right from the start, that's going to set you up right there. Because some people have critical thinking, and so they're able to see something online or videos or whatever, and they have a sense of discernment about what they feel is true or not. Or maybe you meet people and you have some sense of discernment, right? But when you're an emotional thinker or an intuitive thinker, then sometimes you don't have that critical element of the mind. So as a foundation, you want to notice, for one, are you a critical thinker, which is somebody who uses more their mind and they just have this way of being kind of grounded or thinking something through? Or are you maybe an emotional thinker? And or are you also an intuitive thinker? Because sometimes, again, people, you would think that if you're an intuitive thinker that you would be able to maybe discern sometimes what people think. But what happens with intuitive thinkers, like emotional thinkers, just obviously get caught up in the emotion. So if you just start telling me something that's very emotional, you'll engage me very easily, and I'll just go down the rabbit hole with you, right? An intuitive thinker is somebody who, maybe the downside to it is that we have a tendency to kind of see things from a certain higher perspective, like, oh, that person's really good, or this really could be true. You know what I mean? Like, intuitively, all things are possible, right? So again, these are just some of the basics of it. Now, so that's kind of a foundation. So you're with me, Joanne? You kind of get the basics of knowing where you're at on that spectrum is a good place to start. Now, so let's say that you're an emotional empath.
Let me stop you, though. I know we've got a couple people on here. Hi, Sharon. If you guys, do you understand what she's saying? Are you understanding the different degrees and are keeping up with her? If you haven't, please put it in the comments so I can have her go back and answer that. So I just wanted to throw that out, because if you're asking me that, you're feeling somebody is not getting it. So I want to make sure that everybody is.
Right. Okay. So I'm just going to explain a little bit more, right? So particularly if you're an empath, or maybe have an angelic, counsel that you work with or whatever, but let's say you're more empathic, there's a high chance that you're also more of an emotional thinker. Now, not all empaths, some empaths can also have critical thinking, which I really admire when they have that, because they have the heart, but they also have a really balanced common sense about them in a sense, right? So, and one thing that you can do that can actually help you with this is go to humandesignamerica.com. So it's human design. And you can enter it for free, enter your birthday, your name, that kind of thing. And it will kick back a chart to you. And it kind of lets you know if you're power center, if you're a communicator out of your emotions, right? More your solar plexus. When people are sacral, they usually have more common sense to them. They know yes and no the minute you ask them. But if you ask me a question, because I'm an emotional thinker, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say no, yes, no. I'm going to go up and down for probably 2 or 3 days before you actually get a real answer from me, right? I got to feel my way through it. So again, if you're wondering, you can go to humandesignamerica.com and do the test. It's really a fascinating system. Have you ever done that?
I have, actually. Yes, I have. Yeah. I actually have done that. And then I've had Judith that's done a whole chart for me and told me what it's kind of like knowing your astrological sign, right? It really is about knowing what makes you tick and why you do things you do and how you make decisions. It's really, if you guys can do that, please do. It's a really good.
It's a really cool system. And they give you a lot of recordings because it's a lot of information to try to understand, but they do give recordings that go along with it to help you understand the chart a little better. And what it is, it's a comprised system of the I Ching, Western astrology, Eastern astrology, numerology. It just combines all these really ancient intuitive systems together under something called human design. And it's international, which is why they usually say Human Design America, because you'll get it more in English, I think, but it's an international system. And you can be trained and people do coaching in it. It's really cool. So anyway, you can do that and that might help you. Okay, so for me, I started, in the business I do have, because I am more intuitive, I am a little bit more on the left side of things and a little bit more liberal, about stuff. So I do have a lot of people sending me videos all the time on the cabal and the dark state and the pedophile and the Hollywood, drinking the blood and and so I don't know. There's a lot in there, in the 5G and the COVID. So and not only am I emotional and intuitive, but I happen to have a Gemini rising. So that means that as a Gemini rising, it's a communication sign. So I really can see all sides of it. So to me, it's like totally possible. I'm not like a fixed sign, right? So it's like, totally possible. I can see totally that could be true, right?
Yeah.
So it works really well in the work I do, but in relationships or figuring certain things out, I have to really move quite slow. But so I was getting a ton of videos, right? And I mean, I'm getting video after video after video, and I'm getting more and more wired up. So a couple of things happened that got my attention about these videos that really made me take a second guess, right? A second look at it. One was that I was talking to my mom one day and I was going off about something. And of course, I'm very emotional and passionate about it. And she is very liberal. Like, she's the one normally bringing stuff to me that will be like, look at what they're doing. At 6 a.m. every morning, I get all these emails about something, right? And so I thought she would appreciate these conspiracy theories that I have gotten. I'm like, look at what's happening. And she's like, that just doesn't make a lot of sense based on some of the news. And I'm like, that's just because you're buying into it, And she's like, you're giving me a headache. She's like, I'm going to have to go take like an ibuprofen or a Valium or something after talking to you. And she's like, and so that got my attention, because I know when I get really riled up, I'm off my center. So this is my first thing that I would suggest to anybody watching videos right now. They are very believable because that's the whole point of them, right?
Yes, exactly.
So my guess is, because I'm just going to do a disclaimer right up front. I have no idea what's true and what's not. I've not done the research. Okay. But this is what I would tell you about the human psyche and your nervous system, is that when you feel like you're on cocaine and you're all jacked up on your emotions and maybe you're feeling fear or you're feeling confusion, or you can't tell what's true or what's not, and you start to lose yourself, there's a really good sign that whatever you've gotten involved with, and let's say in this case we're talking about conspiracy theories, if you have really a lot of emotion about it, but you really don't have the proof, you haven't really had an experience yourself, your body doesn't lie. So when my mom said, God, you're so jacked up on this, you know? It made me think, wow, all of a sudden it dawned on me, I don't feel calm and peaceful anymore. I lost my calm and peace. I lost my centeredness. And I don't even know if this is true or not, right? So it's not about whether the conspiracy theories are true or not. And like I said, I'm sure there's probably some element of truth. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. So that was the first thing that got my attention, is I was too emotionally wired. So that let me know that I was not in my center anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that happened is that my aunt, who is far right, where you would almost consider me probably far left, she's far right. I woke up one morning and she had sent me one of the same videos I had been watching, except for it came to the angle of the Democrats are trying to kill everybody in the nursing homes, because she had to go into assisted living for about 6 weeks, and I helped her get into that, which she really kind of almost ruined our relationship. But it was the most compassionate thing that could happen, because she was injured and whatever. So, and I'm like, wow, my aunt is sending me one of the same videos. I would never in a million years think that she would. So that was the second thing that happened. And then the third thing I noticed is that every single conspiracy video always had like a little bright and shiny sort of flicker about Trump in there, right? Now, normally, I don't support Trump, right? So normally I would not angle in that direction. But the conspiracy theories, after going through this for about 6 to 8 weeks, watching one after another, and they all kind of had the same message, I was pretty much ready to vote for Trump. And I was totally was convinced that would be okay. And at the very least, I wouldn't vote at all, because I got so confused. I didn't want to create more harm. So maybe I just won't vote at all, which of course also, has an effect, right?
Right.
So that was the third thing that happened. I was doing something I wouldn't have normally done. And like I said, every video I started noticing always had kind of a bright, shiny little thing about Trump sort of mixed into it. It could be anything from Pixie Magenta, who was a channeler, to some of the astrologers, to, and what got me started on it was people in my spiritual community that I really respect, that are kind of like high up in that echelon of like, I know so-and-so and I know so-and-so, like that whole thing. They were the first ones to present it to me. So I thought, oh, it must be real. And, so when all these videos came in, I'm like, yeah. So then the next thing I noticed is, caused me, and you just want to notice this if you've been going down this kind of interesting road too, is that you feel kind of special. It makes you feel kind of special, like you have privileged information that the rest of the world doesn't have. They're just stupid. You know what I mean? And you know the truth. I now know the truth, that there is this thing. So, I'm probably a nonconformist by nature, and I'm not real into following the rules and the laws, and I'm not into the government, and so there's a lot of things that it played upon in me. But when I finally had a few people just sort of get my attention and I started slowing down, like I said, the very first thing I noticed, and this is what I would suggest to people, is how do you feel in your body when you watch the news, when you watch the conspiracy theories? How do you feel in your body? And if it doesn't make you feel good, paranoid, fearful, anxiety, confused, doing something you wouldn't normally do, hopeless about the world, these are signs that there may be an intention backing whatever it is you may be watching that is in alignment.
And that's something that's really important to know. I think we all know it, but I don't think that we pay attention to it, that the news is tailored towards having you to keep coming back to watch it, being reliant on them to give you the truth of what is going on. And of course, each news media has their own truth, right? Their own agenda or whatever they're teaching. But I'm with you, because I didn't quite go down the rabbit hole you went down. I went down another one. But what I was doing is I was watching more news, because I felt like I really needed to be educated. I really needed to know what was going on and be able to make right. And when my daughter and granddaughter was here, my daughter really was, big into every night, like at a certain time, she would turn CNN on, and it was like, what's going on? And I was doing that with her. And then when she left, it's like, oh no, I got to get CNN. I can't go without it. And that's so unlike me because I know how it makes me feel. And so the first night when she left, I didn't turn it on, but the second night I did. And then the third night I didn't. And it was enough for me to have a break to say, how do I feel when I'm watching it? And
Right.
how do I feel when I'm not? And when I didn't watch it that third night, because it gave me a little bit of space, I was a lot calmer. And
Yeah.
it was so really powerful to me that it really made me stop and pay attention to how it made me feel, that I
There
felt
you
calm.
go.
I could think for myself. I wasn't
That's
drawn in. Yeah, this is really an important, because I think a lot of times we think, well, I can watch the news and I can answer to how I feel. But this goes back into really our subject at hand. And I know you're going to get there, but
I am.
if you are in a narcissistic relationship, this is what happens to you. This is the key, because it's like taking a lobster and putting it into a pot of water that's cold and then turning the heat on, right? You don't realize what's happening at the time. And then when you're in that heat, you're like, it all feels normal, and it's not normal. You've got to walk away.
Right. And so the very first thing I'd say, no matter whether you're in a relationship, whether you're in a work environment, whether you're dealing with your family, whether you are watching conspiracy theory, YouTube videos, whether you are watching the news, whether you're following a particular political avenue of something you truly believe in, whichever side it could be on. Yeah, it happens all over the place. So when I started slowing myself down, and again, I just stopped watching everything, for about a week. It's like, nope, I'm calling my power back. You know what I mean? I get this, and I'm calling my power back. I felt great. I felt normal. I felt myself. I could feel, like you said, I felt like I could think for myself.
Right.
And I just became more balanced, immediately. So, so when I slowed myself down, what I started thinking about is, why did I go down that rabbit hole? Like I should know better, but what caused me? Like, it was so addictive for me. And so I started really taking it apart inside myself, because I felt like there was something driving it. And I have other very good friends or clients or family members who are also going down the rabbit hole, and I'm watching them just get lost in it. And so, and it's hard to talk to people about it, because the minute you question it, they think that you sold out, right? So there's two articles that I read. And so one was, I woke up thinking about something. I've been paying attention to my dreams in the morning really strongly. Songs, anything that shows up, and the word gaslighting came into my head, and it was reference to a personal situation I was dealing with in a family situation. But I immediately got up and I looked up the word gaslighting, because it's not like I don't know basically what it means, but I really wanted to read more about it. Well, one of the articles, and again, I think sometimes when you wake up like that, your angels are going to kind of like, they're going to do your algorithms for you. So when you go on to look at something, it's like they sort of put something closer to the top that maybe wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
There was this article, and I've never considered this before, but it was gaslighting, parents who gaslight their children. And so I read the article and was fascinated, because I get the feeling like, I think that when people, like, let's say in the military, are looking for certain people that would be qualified as a Navy SEAL, not everybody's going to be a Navy SEAL.
Right.
But when they're looking for somebody in recruitment right up front, they've already been trained. They know what to prey upon. There's a lot of governments that already know what to prey upon. I mean, they are way more educated. Basic marketing for any major company already know what to prey upon, right? So I'm thinking about these videos, and what I started looking at in myself is that I've got some weak links. I've got some weak character links going on here. And when I started thinking about a lot of the people, and they have done a lot of character studies on this, but people who have been very disappointed in life, people who have had tragedies in life, are going to be way more susceptible to the dystopian type belief systems and anti-religion, or maybe they lose themselves in religion. It can go either way on that one, but particularly anti-government. And so I started thinking about the way I was raised. And with my father, I felt like I couldn't trust him. He was crazy as all get out. And I really couldn't trust him. And so as I got older, I became so hyper independent, and also being a Gen X, I think that can kind of go in that route as well.
Mm-hmm.
But so independent that I don't need anybody. I don't need a government. I don't need a doctor. I don't need a lawyer. I don't need anything that could have power over me. And so when you think about, again, I'm tying this back to the conspiracy theory specifically, but when you have children who have been raised by parents who gaslight them, or matriarchs or patriarchs of the family, it could be a grandparent or aunt or uncle or whatever, that maybe have been gaslighting because of their own trauma. Again, I'm not making them wrong either. I don't think that a lot of people actually even mean or even know that they're gaslighting. What I notice is people who gaslight, well, you're right. Okay.
I do believe, well, I just because you said that, I have to say this. Yeah. I do think that they have some idea of what they're doing it because they're very good at what they do.
They are very good at what they do.
They didn't know what they did. And this is the biggest thing that people don't want to own, is they're still responsible for what they do because they're not a 5-year-old going, I didn't know. So there's a debate, and I'm going to give you that, but they're still ultimately responsible for the gaslighting that they do, and they're magnificent at doing it.
They are, you're right. But, so my point is that I do think they're doing it probably from their own trauma. And when people are gaslighting, the agenda a lot of times, yes, is to manipulate and get their way, but it's coming more from control. Like, in other words, the family member or some of the people I think about, they're not even so sophisticated that they would say, I'm going to go gaslight individuals for blah, blah, blah. But I do think that they do know what they're doing to get their way. And it is coming out of deep trauma, control issues, things that go on inside of them. And I'm not excusing them. I'm just sort of like kind of seeing it from both sides in a way, to have more compassion, right? So, but when you have a parent who is gaslighting a child, you are already kind of at a disadvantage, because a parent usually has more power over a child, typically, like they're making the rules of the house. So you're already in a very vulnerable role of giving your power away. But when you have a parent who has mental illness, emotional illness, control issues, unresolved trauma, and they are doing gaslighting with you, you, at some point, you have a very hard time telling what's real and what's not any longer. You get to be an adult and you're in relationships with people, personal, business, trying to make decisions for your life, working with politics, working with, trying to make political decisions, watching YouTube videos, watching the news. It's very, very difficult. And now we're in a society, and I do think this is probably international, where the level of trust is so low right now in general. It's insane. So now it's been brought up. It's very, very hard to trust the news, and anything could be real or fake. And it's hard to tell.
It is. It really is.
People who don't even mean harm, it may or may not be real.
Exactly. And that's why I mentioned that a couple videos ago about one of the I want to say really fast, I'm really glad that people are really starting to pay attention. Like, we're bringing the awareness of paying attention to your body. How does it feel when you're in a situation, or how does it feel when you're in something that's uncomfortable? But when you're doing anything, when it comes to any information, you should be testing it. You can't just take things on face value in the world that we live in, with the kind of media that we have now, with the kind of technology where anybody can put anything out and it looks legitimate. We have to be able to trust it.
Right. So let's say, and so you do have to do more research, right? And some things you're just not going to be able to research. You're not going to be able to know the truth about certain things. And this is where I keep bringing it back to your body's wisdom. Your intuition, your body's wisdom does have an instinctual knowing when you're being played. And so I found that when I was watching a lot of the conspiracy videos, even if there was elements of truth to it, even if it did play to my lack of trusting society or authority figures, it still is playing me. You know what I mean? I can tell, right? So let's look at for a second the 6 signs if you were raised by a parent who was gaslighting, or if you're gaslighting your own child. It's good to know, right?
I'm going to put the article in the chat box.
Because I'm just going to do the highlights of it, but the article is excellent, right? And you can put the other article in too, because I'm fixing to tie it in. So again, when I'm kind of like dismantling my own psyche and trying to improve my own capacity for thinking, I realized I had some dark spots. I had some weak links that I was losing myself to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the first one is, let's say, as a parent to a child. So you're thinking about this either from as your parent doing this, or again, if you're a parent. But most of all, if you have a parent, that the parent exaggerates every conflict. So there's never a small issue. Every single thing your child does wrong causes you to fly off the handle and react. So boom, notice how that feels in your body. Did you have a parent who did that, right? The second one is a meter maid is more flexible than your parent. You will not allow for any changes in your household routine. No matter how small, you need to feel completely in control of your environment at all times, which sometimes means you might get unreasonably angry when your child does something. So notice how that feels in your body. Did you have an unreasonable parent when it came to your home life? Another one is you mock your kids' behaviors. So, basically humiliating your child's feelings.
Yeah. Yes. You're not.
So when you're mocking your child, it's like you're making fun of their feelings, or you're telling them that their feelings aren't right. So did you have a parent that did that with you? So another one is you overassert your power. As the parent, you're already the one in control of mostly everything, but that may not feel like enough for you. The moment you sense your child is flexing their wings and asserting control, you feel fear that this could mean that one day they may not need you, or may no longer view you as the center of their universe. And you combat this by talking crap about all their friends, none of which you think are good enough for them, and continually sending your child the message that they are helpless without your guidance. This in turn isolates your child from friends and family, another sign of gaslighting.
Yep.
Okay. Number 5, you insist you know your children better than they know themselves. That's a huge one, right? No one, not even your frustrated kid, can convince you that you may actually be wrong about your feelings and intentions. You have it in your mind that they're responding a certain way because they're angry or sad. You'll tell them they're lying, or that they aren't grown up enough to understand, or again, their feelings are wrong, right? And then the 6th one is you never apologize to your child. Saying I'm sorry to you is the equivalent of surrendering all your power and having no worth as an individual. So again, I'm reading this as a parent was doing that, but notice if you have any of that, even one of them can be super damaging, right? Even just one of them.
Absolutely.
So, that's a big deal. Okay, so noticing then if you had a parent, because in a way we might have people in perhaps in politics right now who are gaslighting. You know what I mean? Very consciously, very purposely. And, I could certainly name names, but I don't even know if that's necessary.
Yeah, we have to.
Because I think it happens with a lot of people once they get power. You know what I mean? So there is that aspect of, if you were raised by a parent that was gaslighting you, you are so susceptible and vulnerable now. If you are in a partnership where somebody's doing that to you, or a work environment where you have a boss doing that to you, or if you have friends that are doing that with you, or you're dealing with the politics, which is a huge thing right now for all of us, right? So you're going to be more susceptible to it. Like you might have that big red flag that causes you to really hate it,
right.
hate that person. And then on the other hand, so you can imagine, right? If on one hand, let's say we have a president that a lot of people feel like are gaslighting, right, in terms of his behavior. Then on the other hand, you have conspiracy videos playing on this other side of you. You're caught between two different worlds that are both gaslighting you. They're both playing on something that are taking advantage of maybe an already wounded inner child, an already part of you that's vulnerable to giving your power away. You see what I mean? And so even the conspiracy theories, when you look, and it's so weird because in a way, a lot of the conspiracy theories say there's a shadow government, there's a dark government, there's a cabal. And again, this isn't about whether it's true or not. It very well could be. I'm not convinced there's not, but I'm also saying that the particular way they did videos right now before the election, I do feel have an agenda behind it, regardless of the truth in the video. I think that there is an agenda backing it. And it's interesting because it normally winds people right back around to another situation where there might be gaslighting going on. See what I mean? Like, it's weird the way it's set up.
Well, one of the things I wanted to say in that, though, is because, okay, I'm just going to say, I didn't know if I would or not, but I was raised by a narcissistic parental supervision. I'm going to just put it that way. We'll just generalize it. I feel like, so I've done a lot of reading about narcissistic behavior because I also was married to a narcissist. And it takes a lot of effort to come out of that, but you can come out of it. You can learn how to deal with it and what are the signs. But the interesting thing, I haven't really done much work on narcissistic behavior for a while now because I thought, okay, now I'm pretty up on it or whatever. Well, I somehow was, like you said, you're led to something, and when the vibration's right. So I was led to this book that I'm reading. And one of the things that she really talks a lot about is even the best specialists in narcissistic behavior can be duped by a narcissist because they're so good at being covert and sneaky in how they kind of sneak these things in. So it's really important to, I guess the reason I'm saying that is that we could have proclivities to it. I feel like that is true, but we also can educate ourselves and pay attention. Like Sharon was saying, Lee was saying that she was in a relationship where she was feeling like an elephant was sitting on her chest. She could feel in her body that something wasn't right. Those are the things that you pay attention to start waking up. But the other thing is, like, everything in this article that you just read is really true to pay attention to. And it's really important that you're clear about what a narcissistic behavior is, so you're aware of it and you see the red flags before you get into relationships. Because if you do that, you may get into one for a very short period of time, but you're going to catch it and be able to get out of it. Now, in this particular situation, we're talking about politics and what's going on in the world and the fact that, this is happening. Don't you think there's this like sense of, how do we have a sense of balance with that? Because there's nothing, we don't have control. Like even the conspiracy theory about Gates putting chips in the vaccine so we can be tracked and I guess I want to say, does it matter if it's the truth, or does it matter in how you react to the truth and how you allow that to affect your life and what you participate in? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'd say it really, I don't believe that we're going to be able to flush out the truth on all the conspiracy theories. So, really the short answer to your question is no, it doesn't really matter, because all you have to do is trust your body's wisdom.
Right.
And, and just work from that point. Like you're calling your power back, not only from a conspiracy theory, not only from a partner, not only from a political, whatever could be going on, but even more than that, let's say from an inner child aspect of whatever you might have been through that didn't feel honest, it didn't feel like for a lot of people's childhood, particularly people in our arena who are already empathic, high empaths, or people who have special traits, it really messes with the head to have somebody to have to almost be forced to give your power away to somebody just for your own survival. You see what I mean? Yeah. And so when you go into the world, you've already been trained to do that in a sense, right? So the key here, if we just take all the subject matters away for a moment, this is actually an empowerment inside of yourself where you already know the truth about what's in alignment for you at a particular given time with a particular given person. And you're learning to retrust yourself right now. You said that's the cool part of this. So the second article, and Joanne, hopefully we'll put that up in the thing, it really supported, like I found that two of them went together. So there is something called kind of a, in the social psychologist field called a conspiracy mentality. So I would say I play into that. You know what I mean? Like I'm one that's going to be easy to target for that. And again, it's because I feel that a lot of us have had parents, whether they knew it or not, whether they're taking responsibility or not, might have been having major control issues, gaslighting, alcoholism, sexual inappropriateness. I mean, there's just a string of things that I think a lot of us have been raised in that made us feel like we couldn't trust ourselves, right? And so to whatever extent the gaslighting came in is to whatever extent your childhood is. And then again, that kind of leaves sort of like a shadow or like a dark spot in your mind about some things where you may not be able to quite trust yourself. So in the conspiracy mentality, which I think does come when you have parents who are really out of balance or out of alignment, and then they want to control do the gaslighting thing, it creates maybe on some level also people who are emotional thinkers can be very gullible, right?
Yes.
So this is one of the things they say is that the gullible rarely believe they are gullible.
Right.
The closed-minded don't believe they're closed-minded. And the worst scenario is that you have a gullible person, which I would say I am, because I do sort of give people the benefit of the doubt most of the time. Sure, anything's possible. I'm usually seeing people from their higher self point of view. You know, it does make me a little bit more gullible with people on that level.
Yeah.
But then if a double negative comes in and I'm looking at it, let's say a conspiracy theory, I'm gullible to whatever information they're setting out. I totally see the possibility of it being true, and they've emotionally hooked me, because there's always an emotional hook with conspiracy theories. And so they've emotionally hooked me. And then what happens is now the double negative is if I get closed-minded. I'm right. You know what I mean? And you see that, like a lot of the people who are out there, like you'll notice what I started realizing when I started opening my mind is that the far left and the far right actually were the exact same conspiracy theories. Like I said, the videos I was watching and the videos my aunts were watching were the same videos, but just with a different angle. So this is where you have to add in, and I do not have the link for this right now, but it's a podcast called Rabbit Hole. And it's a New York Times journalist, you know, investigative reporter who started looking at the conspiracy theory. And it is a fascinating 10 series episode called Rabbit Hole. And I mean, you would not believe the rabbit holes he goes into to eventually episodes 9 and 10 get to QAnon, which is a big conspiracy theory right now, is coming out by QAnon.
It is.
If you even look up QAnon on Wikipedia, which Alice did for me, thank goodness, you know, which got me a little bit, but it's actually a far right. Like I thought it was far left, but in truth, it was a far right kind of religious group. And I would sort of say there might be some political intentions sort of coming, that somebody's created it with a particular intention behind it. And they're very cleverly done. Anyway, but his whole series about algorithms. So when I get on and I look at one video, you have no idea the algorithms of your Facebook, your YouTube, your Twitter accounts, what you're watching on your smart TV, Netflix, documentaries that you watch. I mean, it's insane, the algorithms, and they've already admitted that they definitely have some problems with it. And so, you know, the algorithms, they sort of make the point, can take people down rabbit holes where they were just looking at something, but something pops up over here and the algorithm is kind of testing them and leading them into this way. And before you know it, they have literally kind of gotten into kind of a cult. It's like actually sort of seeing a little bit more cultish now than information just being put out there, right? So the algorithms, again, they're gaslighting you, basically. You know, your Facebook account. And you know, it's kind of a big deal. So again, with the algorithms, my aunt was fed the same QAnon video, but for her algorithm, it was cleverly made with a ton of the information, except for it specifically said the Democrats were trying to kill off the nursing home people.
Yeah.
Because that's what she had been researching. That's what she was so upset about. Whereas me, I never got that one. The ones I got, again, from QAnon, exactly the same videos, but made with a different emotional engagement, was about the human trafficking, which is a really big deal for me. I have done research on that. And also more of a satanic cult. I do a lot of spiritual work and I talk about angels. So man, you start talking to me about dark entities and satanic energies, it's a hook for me. I'm like, crusade, save the world. This is horrible. So it gets me emotionally hooked. But they were both coming from QAnon. So that just makes me think about who is behind the videos creating it.
Right.
The people who are already emotionally have weak links, which eventually lead to a political agenda. And that was one of my red flags. If it had not gone to a political agenda, in this case, it was Trump, which again, I was pretty much convinced I would vote for, because of what they have, said. It was just interesting.
I'm sorry. I said, this is insane. I'm sorry. I know what you're saying, but keep going on. It's just
okay. So in this article about conspiracy mentality, it's kind of it's hard for me to admit. You know what I mean? It definitely makes me feel like a fool. It makes me feel stupid. It makes me feel bad about myself. But it's better for me to admit it now than to do something that might create more harm or more karma later in my life, because I'm picking bad relationships, or I'm dealing with certain issues. I'm being jerked around, in society by something. So I'd rather be gullible and open-minded than gullible and closed-minded, because at least I have a chance. And again, I think it's partially because I have that Gemini rising. I do see things from all sides. And so I don't mind saying, oh man, I was kind of going down a rabbit hole, and yeah, I do feel foolish, but I don't mind admitting that. You know what I'm saying? So in this article, one of the things it says is that people have intellectual, and this is dealing with the mental body, intellectual vices, which is gullibility, closed-mindedness, radicalism, things where kind of like maybe OCD type things, control issues. These are intellectual vices. Things aren't working in your mind well. It's working against you. It's a vice. Then there's intellectual virtues, compassion, open-mindedness, the ability to see a higher truth, unity consciousness. And we all have both. You just have to figure out what your vices are so that you can be more aware of it. You see what I mean? So we all have virtues and vices. But if you get stuck in your vices, and I found personally that when I was watching the conspiracy theories, it was triggering all of my vices. I don't trust you. I don't trust the world. Maybe I'll buy a gun. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do that. Like, I was so psyched out that the vices was literally convincing me to do things that on a soul level I would never agree to or want to do. My virtues, on the other hand, keep me pretty stable, and it allows me to do a really great job at the work I do with people. It allows me to be compassionate. It allows me to be a better human being, I'd say, right? So you start noticing this in terms of your psyche, and that's something I would, you just have to kind of think it through. What are my vices and what are my virtues? And if you just sort of sit with yourself and think about it, and again, you really want to stay open-minded, and you might feel regret. You might feel a sense of being made a fool of. You might feel kind of bad about yourself. But when you feel the consequence of your choice or your vice or the downside of your character, sometimes feeling the consequence, the weight of it, is actually why you would choose to do something different. You see what I mean? Like, it's not a bad thing. It's like sometimes if we feel fear about something, it's a healthy fear, or anger or guilt. It's our system letting us know something's out of balance, right? So it's not always a bad thing. And once you feel the weight of what you've been doing, and yeah, you might feel bad about it for a day or 2 or 3 days, but eventually you actually feel good about yourself, because you're like, you know what? That's something I accomplished. That's something I pulled myself through. I brought myself back to myself. And I think the most dangerous thing that's happening, whether it's the conspiracy theories or the news or the politics or gaslighting parents or bad relationships or addictions or emotional addictions, physical addictions, the thing that all of those have in common is that it takes you away from your divinity. It takes you away from your essence self.
Wait, I gotta hold it here, because I'm intrigued by what Sharon said about the Democrats. Question mark. Oh, please. This is and I appreciate that you said that, because it brought me back to understanding that what you're saying is that point exactly. It's not about any one of these things. It's about you being in integrity to yourself. Because if you think about it, and I heard that Apple, in the next update that they're going to do, they're going to have something that will help protect us from this information that's being spread out. For anything we do, it's going to help with that. it's scary that that happens, that if you go on and look at glasses, I've been looking on at glasses because I want to get a new pair of glasses. And now everywhere I go, I'm seeing glasses. It's like they know
Algorithm.
everything
Your
about it.
algorithm took you straight there.
So it's
And to
under,
me, I feel like algorithms, I feel to a large extent, are gaslighting people.
exactly, because they're causing you to think in a way that's not yours. They're
Yeah.
convincing you that you need to do something according to their agenda, not your agenda. It's like, listen to what I'm saying to you, don't watch what I'm doing. That's what it is. And that's what gaslighting is. It's like saying, listen, I love you. I care about you. Your best interest is in heart for me. I'm going to do what's right for you. And then they go and they tell everybody in your peeps, your friends, your circle, you're a horrible person. Don't listen to her. That's gaslighting. And that's what's happening because they're watching what you do and they have an agenda. I guess, and part of what I was thinking when you were saying this is that we could get very frustrated by it because we can't control it. And we can't control, on the surface, we can't control it. And we can't control how we're affected by it. But what we can do is go back to the beginning where we're monitoring what information we allow to come in. How are we assimilating the information? Listening to our body. Is this in right alignment to how I feel? There's so many things that we can do to take control. So I really want people not to listen to this and feel like hopeless or what do I do or how do I handle this or,
Yeah. And first it's just admitting, wow, I do have some intellectual vices and some intellectual virtues. And let me look at that list. And was I raised by a family member? Because sometimes they're even an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, a matriarch, a patriarch of the family, a sibling that can also be doing the gaslighting, right? It doesn't have to be a parent, right? Or if you were adopted, etc. Maybe you've had partnerships. So it's about calling your power back and coming back to your own true presence. And again, there are things I would agree about Trump and agree with the Republicans. And there's certain things I agree about the Democrats and I agree about Barack Obama. So it's really, I don't have any big agenda one way or the other on the politics or this religion or that religion. Really don't have a big charge on it personally. Some people are very polarized by it. That's just not one of my personal vices. I think that really whoever the human being is that steps into a position of being in service to society, whether it's a president or a congressperson or a mayor or whatever, it's kind of looking at the person themselves. So this is definitely not about convincing anybody one way or the other. I'm just using my own personal story about certain things. But again, I think that if I sent that gaslighting article to all the members, all my cousins, all the family members, because I was hoping that if they read it, they would wake up to where maybe they have struggled. Because when I really looked at the years where I felt like this gaslighting was going on, and I'm just now waking up to it for myself with this particular family member, I'm like, oh my God. I mean, this has caused problems between me and my mother. I mean, I was so convinced that this person has everything they told me was so true that I felt like I owed them my life. And so when it came to being of service, to this particular family member, I felt like I owed them my life because of what they told me since I was an infant. And all of a sudden I'm waking up to, wow, that wasn't even the truth. That's probably their perception, but it wasn't actually the truth as a whole for what went on. And I'm seeing other family members being kind of in an abusive situation to certain things that are going on now. And I would have normally excused it. I would have gone along with it. I would have done it. But waking up to the gaslighting was huge. And that was the first step for me, is where you had that. The second step was the article on the intellectual vices and virtues, and realizing that our mind, based on how we were raised, will sometimes be driven into certain vices. And that's what I'm saying, don't blame yourself. If you start realizing your vices, you want to have a lot of compassion with yourself. Because if you look at where your vices came from, more than likely they're behavior patterns that are helping you survive aspects of your childhood. And they're just like, for me, I don't trust people. I don't trust the government. I don't care who's running. You know what I mean? Like, I can find the best person in the world, but eventually I'll find a way not to trust them. You see what I'm saying? And, and I guess the thing is, I don't want somebody maybe in a different country, maybe for a different religion. I don't know who's behind a lot of these conspiracy theories, but I didn't like being played upon. I didn't like the disadvantage of my childhood being used against me and emotionally kind of jerking a chain for whatever agenda they may have had that I couldn't think through on my own. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not our fault sometimes when we can't think something through because of certain things we've experienced. It's like a learning curve. Like, I just say, okay, well, I'm getting better at that now. But I also know it's like if you've had sexual abuse as a child, if you've had addictions, if you've had being raised by certain types of parents or mental illness, like whatever your deal is, once you realize how much it's affected you, you can then improve upon it, call your power back, and you can move forward with your life. But until you finally just like, wow, I mean, I've grieved this family member. Like, it has totally changed my relationship with them. It'll never be the same. And it's very sad. But it has also set me free to be able to move forward with my life, call my power back, and to have a better mind and a better heart and a better way of managing my life versus continuing. Because what I figured out was that the gaslighting relative, situation that I had going on, I realized when I finally saw what was happening, that I had just been blindly going along with and not seeing. I was never quite comfortable with this person, like in certain things that would happen, but I thought I loved them. I thought everything was good and that they were my best advocate. And when I finally stopped and realized I had been not necessarily intentionally lied to, I don't know, Joanne, I go back and forth on this because it wasn't intentional. And on the other hand, it's just maybe I'm still in some denial I'm working out. I mean, I see where they purposely did control things,
right?
But it's been a deep grief for me, and it's changed my relationship. But this is the thing. I realized that almost every partner I had up until recently actually was more like this person than one of my parents. You know what I mean? Like somebody different than I thought. I was astounded that I had literally picked partners who were doing gaslighting by saying, I love you. I'm your best advocate. I'm the one that you can trust. Like, they did everything that I realized this relative had been doing. Every single partner I had played this out. And for me, the conspiracy videos were doing the same thing. I have your best interest in mind. I'm telling you the truth. I'm going to save you. I'm the one that's going to, you know what I mean? And it's not necessarily true.
So one of the things I did is I did an acronym that came from a book that I read. I'll have to post the name of the book, and I'll do that, about basically the acronym for the power that we need to come out of narcissistic behavior. And so I have that posted in the chat on both Facebook and on YouTube. And Sharon, I understood what you meant. I appreciated your question and used it because it's really important for us to realize how sinister it can be if you're not looking from an objective point of view. But the thing that you're really bringing out, Adrienne, that's really important is that narcissistic behavior is well and good in our society on all levels, on every level. And what is so important is that we arm ourselves with understanding what those tactics are. Because eventually, and like you, I had someone in my life who was an expert at making me think that everything that person did was for my best and highest good. And absolutely none of it was. And for years, I was like, I was duped over it. And it's coming out of that and understanding the lessons that are learned from that, right? The strength that we gain from it, how much we see the depth of who we are and why we would go down a direction like that. And it all comes back to worthiness, which for me So I was talking to Reverend Barry King, which I absolutely a newfound person. He is an amazing person. I had this wonderful opportunity that Marilyn Freeze gave me to speak with this gentleman. And so it was asked to him, what does worthiness really mean? And why do we have this thing about being or feeling unworthy? Because if you talk to so many people, almost everybody's going to say, I feel unworthy.
Yeah,
in some way, shape, or form. And it was interesting because I was visualizing one day, and he really talked about it more about when you can visualize yourself as your higher self and know who you are and really connect to who you are as your higher self and the power that you have as your higher self. That's who you really are, but that's not who we believe we are. We believe we're this human being that's here on this planet. And when you can actually connect and believe that that is who you are, that higher self, that soul being, that's where your power comes from. And that's where we have the disconnect between our worthiness. It's our unworthiness to really trust that that's who we are, is that soul, that power, that entity, that strength, that all knowing, that all loving, that all being. That's who we are. And so when we can connect to that part of us, then we're going to look at somebody who's going to say that, they have our best interest at heart, and then stomp on us and say, well, I don't have time for you. But it comes from that part of you. It comes from not believing that you're worthy, that we look outside of ourselves for somebody else to make us feel better, to make us feel whole, to make us feel secure instead of looking within ourselves.
Well, and this is the thing that I found was so valuable for me, particularly in the parent gaslighting child, or whoever the family member is that as an infant, as a child, it's like you are like you're working at that disadvantage because the person that you look up to, the person who's there for you, is telling you, I love you, and this is what love means.
Exactly.
So you're learning it before you even have a right to decide. Like if somebody came in and slapped me in the face and said, I love you, I'd be like, no, you don't. I would, as an adult, I can perfectly tell you that you don't if you do that, right? For no apparent reason.
Yeah, right.
But, when you're an infant and a child and somebody has that much need to be in control, they are saying, I love you, and this is the way the world is, and I am always right, and I'm going to run this family, and I might be abusive to people sometime, and I might lie to them, but it's always for everybody else's benefit, right? And they can't admit their mistakes.
Right.
You grow up at the disadvantage of feeling that's true. And so when you get around other people in your life who are mimicking that behavior, your unconscious just assumes that must be true. It's like, and that's where I feel this is such an unjust thing. And this is actually a difficult interview for me to do with you because I am, basically, like, it was one thing for me to admit this about my family member.
Right.
And wake up myself. And then I kind of fringed on the edge of like telling my family, you know what I mean? A little bit like the ones I wanted to, give information to help them, because I'm like, oh my God, I love you so much. And I woke up, I want you to wake up too, to this, because I could see they're suffering over it. But to actually be in this interview with you and saying it out loud, like, I feel like I'm betraying. Like, it's so interesting. It's almost like the Stockholm syndrome.
Yes.
It's like you're trained to love somebody.
Yep.
And one of the things is they don't want to feel betrayed. You know what I mean? That's part of the control issue in my gaslighting, right? And I do think it's a very common one. Like, don't betray me or you won't be loved, kind of thing. And it's like, by saying what I'm saying, like I'm being as personal I am about it in my life right now, it's an interesting, it's a whole nother level of ownership. Again, I think that when you're dealing with certain emotional addictions, it's hard to admit it to yourself. And then you might admit it to a few people around you, but then when you kind of go more public with it, I do think it's quite helpful and it sets us free, but I'm surprised at how tight my chest is and my solar plexus. Even saying out loud about this person as if I'm betraying them.
It's funny how people react because, we talked about how nervous you were, and now I understand better in a different way. But I also was like, how much do I want to talk about my childhood? How much do I want to talk about the way that I grew up? Because I also grew up with that kind of relationship, right? Where I was definitely gaslighted quite a bit. In fact, it took me until I was probably in my 30s when somebody would come home not to be freaked out because I was going to be doing something wrong. Or actually, sometimes even now I still have it. If, like, when my daughter was here, something had happened and I realized, oh, I haven't had that feeling in a long time because I live alone. So it's like, I don't have anybody come home, but just that feeling of every time that this person would come home, I would be terrified of what kind of trouble I was going to get in. What did I not do? How did I not do something right? You know, there was so many things to it, and it affects you for a long time. And also in my marriage, where nothing I did was right. Nothing. And so it becomes so much a part of what you think you are, and it's not the truth of who you are. And that's the one thing that you and I had talked about not too long ago, about one of the biggest steps to this is to walk away, completely break the relationship with a narcissistic person, because you don't have, it takes time to be able to see what these kind of reactions and these things are. What am I thinking of? How the effects of how somebody treats you are, until you walk away, and then you can look at it and go, oh, wow. Like, I used to tell people that my husband would have crossed a shark infested water to do something for me. That's how much I believed it, until I had walked away and I realized he would have thrown me in the water so he could get to the other side. Big difference there. But that's what I believe.
I totally hear you. Yeah. And
I'm going to put in the chat the acronym for narcissist, so you guys can have that. I put the power. Now I'm putting the acronym for narcissist in there.
One of the other things to watch for is that these gaslighting relationships make a special relationship. So they create what's called special relationships, and that's in, I don't know, I forget the name of the text right now, but
it's in this acronym as well. Special.
Yeah. So whenever you have a special relationship, which I had with this family member and I had with these ex-partners, you know, above and everybody else, and you know what made it so special? I always let them be right.
Yeah.
I would even make up reasons for them to be right when even they knew they weren't right, and the whole world knew they weren't right, and I knew they weren't right, and I would justify it. So we had a great relationship. I didn't argue. We got along. I thought I had a good, healthy relationship with these people.
Exactly.
Up until I said I didn't want to do something. You know what I mean? Each of these relationships ended in my life, because I've had, you know, a number of them, right? But they always ended when I finally trusted my feeling over something that they wanted from me. So I would spend years of my life giving them whatever it was they wanted. And they were always right. It was always good to go. And I was always up to whatever they needed to be done. And the minute I finally said, no, I can't do that, and I saw the backlash, wow, it was harsh coming from this person. I mean, and I had given like, it was a big, big deal. And I'm like, wow, that was not unconditional at all. And now I'm in the doghouse, and I lost that special relationship because I did not give them what they wanted ultimately, even though it wasn't probably even the best thing for them either. You know what I mean? And that's again what happened. That's what ended every relationship where I was being gaslighted, is that I went as far as I could go. And when I finally did something on behalf of my own soul, I saw the truth of that person, and it was mean. It was, and this is not just this person. This was every single person that I've actually, this particular person mimicked all my partnerships up until recently. And that really played out bad. You know what I mean? And then you walk away feeling crushed. So this is like one of the fallouts is like, oh no, I must be really wrong. I mean, because it's to the point where these people literally think like you're the devil incarnate, like you are the spawn of Satan for some reason now. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm serious. Like, I've had people call me the darkest, like as light as I was and as much of a good person I was, man, I fell from that pedestal of that special relationship. And I was like this, you know, the darkest of dark. And, you know, to the point that they were going to die, they were going to commit suicide. I mean, it got nasty with every one of these relationships, but they all had the same thing in common. And like I said, once I found the core person that I was totally blinded, that was the gaslighting person. It wasn't the person I thought, right? The one that was most obvious, it was this other person. And once I realized that, I thought, oh my God, every relationship I've had has patterned that one, not the one. You know what I mean? It was fascinating, but it will set you free. It's like you will never be the same again.
Absolutely.
In a good way. But it is heartbreaking. Like I have to say, I've been through a lot of grieving. I mean, the waking up is not always fun for a little bit. I mean, the freedom is definitely worth it. Who you become on the other side of it, yourself, is so worth it. But you feel duped, you feel made a fool of, you feel made wrong, you feel everything they're accusing you of. And it's so threatening. Like when the gaslighting person gets mad at you, like they have all these techniques that would normally hook you, pull you in gently. But when you still hold the line, it becomes right in your face, usually pretty full on, pretty mean.
I want to also point out here, because it happens in the woo-woo world as well. And I think that we overlook it and the reason that I know this is because one of the techniques is that they're special. They're above everybody else. They have some special knowledge that nobody else has. I think like when I first started mediumship, there was this whole big thing about not everybody's a medium. Not everybody can be a psychic, but not everybody can be a medium. Not everybody can be a psychic, but you got all these things about what people believe in that world. But when you think about and connect to the universal consciousness, we know that we're all one. We're all connected, right? We're all connected to the one. And we're all sparks of our soul being. I think that we all come here for specific reasons, so we may have proclivities to do different things. But all of us have these abilities. All of us have the capabilities of tapping into any one of these things that we want to do. We just may not be interested in it. It's not about somebody having some special thing over somebody else. It's a matter of, what are you putting your energy to? What are you focusing on? And if we can all believe that, how that would change our world as well. If we all knew that if we would just trust or just pay attention to it, that we could have these abilities. And don't give your power to people who say they have these special things. If somebody's saying I'm special, or I have something better than somebody else, or somebody else doesn't know what I know, or any of that stuff, walk away.
Or you're special to me.
Oh, that too.
When you have me on the pedestal, you're really special to me, because they need you in order to be on the pedestal. They need everybody holding them up. You see what I mean? They need the control, basically, And I think that one of the other weak links that I've noticed that really made me question whether or not I wanted to go down the road of kind of shaking the apple tree on this one was the fear of being alone. You know what I mean? Like, again, this person in my life for a long time, I mean, you think you can count on them. You think you have a special relationship. You think they think highly of you. And one of the bigger fears I find, particularly with people who are spiritually inclined, is that we have a deep fear of being alone, which is absolutely ridiculous, because people who are spiritually connected know that there's angels, there's masters, and we got this connection. You would not think that we are the ones that are probably most sensitive to that fear. Like money, whatever, power, fame and fortune, but loneliness, you have got my attention. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I know on so many levels, life is good. I'm okay. You're okay. We're all good to go. But man, once you trigger the fact that I might be alone, that one is really scary. And so the reason I find that one so important to people who kind of have a spiritual inclination is because they are so connected. But what happens is when you have a gaslighting family member or person in your life, you step away from yourself.
Yes.
So the fear of losing them makes you feel like you're alone. And that's one of the hooks where people can sometimes control you the most.
Yes.
That you're going to lose a special relationship. You're going to be made wrong. The rest of the family's going to hate you, or the rest of the world, community, whatever. But even deeper than that is you will be alone. Like, if you do not give me my way, you will be alone in the world. And they may not even say it that way, but the intention is there because you've given them so much power. So to heal that is, you have to remember, you really do have to come back and spend time with yourself and come into your own source energy. The minute you do that, you realize that's just a total lie, a total crock. You know what I'm saying? But you have to remember that you even stepped away from yourself. And so the only reason you have the anxiety of that you're going to be alone in the world is because you stepped away from yourself. And in a way, I think that when people are gaslighting you, you know how sometimes people can groom children for sexual abuse?
Yeah.
You can groom somebody to get their power, you can groom somebody politically, you can groom somebody to do all kinds of things, right? Well, the gaslighting relationship is definitely kind of a grooming.
And there's a whole side to that, and a lot of books written about how they groom you. And it's funny because the book that I'm reading actually does have that in it. And when I married my husband, he did it in a way that it worked perfectly, that I hadn't even noticed, like separating you from your family, separating you from your friends, separating you from the things you like, but I won't go into what happened, but it happened naturally. So he didn't really have to work that hard at it. But the one thing that kept on striking me odd is that he could have married somebody else, but didn't. But that person would have been in the heart of how that person was living, meaning in where she lived, where her friends were, where her family was. So it wouldn't have been as easy to have, used those magical spells on her as it was on me. But there is a lot written about how they groom, and it is something. I think that, like I said before, I think it's something that we really need to understand is narcissistic behavior, because it's in so many aspects of our life that we don't even realize. And it is about making us feel special. It is about making us feel needed. Like for me, it's about being needed, about really being loved. It's about being accepted, and those are things that we really want and desire in our lives. But the key back to that, though, is those are probably not the things that we're giving to ourselves. And that's how come they're able to use them on us. So we have to be aware of what the symptoms are so we're able to work with it within ourselves.
Well, and in the Rabbit Hole podcast, it's called Rabbit Hole, and that's the podcast.
I put the name of it on there, but I get the link.
Yeah, he does talk about basically in the end that there was really QAnon. You would think that there's actually a lot of younger people in QAnon, but in truth, it was a much older community that was in QAnon. And what they had done is, what the researcher found was that QAnon sometimes throws statements out and says stuff on their sites, but really the community bonded together. And so it's people who were hurt, they were injured, they lost houses, they had marriages failed, the government disappointed them, their parents, their kids disappointed them. And so whatever their heartbreak was, in a sense, it's like they felt so alone and so discarded for whatever reason to their life tragedy, and that nobody was really there for them. And this QAnon energy, what it did was it brought them together. So they have a community which is now kind of more seen cult-like because of what they're bonding over. It's not so much a healthy bonding.
Right.
They compare it kind of like almost cultish. And they've had some people sort of step out of it. And again, what happens is once you step out of it, because there's gullibility and closed-mindedness, you're not with us anymore. That means you're out. It's not any better than the whole Ron Hubbard, Scientology. It's like, or Jehovah's Witness, like you are now banned from our group. You know what I mean? It's like you lose again. So again, it feeds on this sense that you are now alone. You're separate. You're back left alone with your pain.
Right. Exactly. But there is hope, and there is a future, and there is a direction to go, because we are here for a reason. We're doing a purpose while we're here. We're learning and growing and evolving as a soul, and we're not doing it wrong. So this is the experience that we chose to be in, even though I questioned my thinking on that one.
So this is the really super cool thing. So because as we entered into 2020, one of the things that happened with all these ascension codes and this higher light coming onto the planet, what's happening is it is bringing up the deeper pain in some of these things that are out there. And one of the things that's happening is, because of the type of frequency of light coming onto the planet right now, it's very conducive to your fifth dimensional self coming in. Your fifth dimensional self is like your galactic self, right? And your galactic self is like this higher part of you that understands how to integrate all of your archetypes, all of
Mm-hmm.
who you are, and the soul wisdom of who you are, right? So right now we're in this amazing, like, that we have waited eons of time for this particular waking up. And the waking up is about coming back into your own higher presence, coming to
Yes.
your I am presence, coming to really actually living as your fifth dimensional self, living from that light and where your soul is kind of opening. And right now, coming up on August 8th, we have the Lion's Gate coming in, kind of an astrological event, which I think is very conducive to your galactic self. So if there is a waking up happening on the planet, and even our conversation in terms of like a waking up in a sense to the gaslight, conspiracy theories, whatever. And again, once you kind of wake up, you'll be able to discern what is true and what's not about the news or the videos or that relationship or this person or this work environment. You can actually discern which parts are true and which parts aren't. You know what I mean? Like what part's real and what part isn't, you know what I mean? Because not all relationships have to be thrown out necessarily entirely. But I find that when somebody is not willing to step out of their gaslighting behavior, it's not really a relationship I can foster. It's not one that I can really,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? And even this family dynamic, I can keep it sort of superficial, blah, blah, blah. But at a deeper level, I'm disappointed, it's not real anymore.
Yeah.
If it's not real anymore, your heart isn't in it. It's different.
Well, I think as empaths too, we take things like that to heart because, we want the best for people. We want the best for everybody. But we also have to have that balance to say, okay, we need to have some separation. So it's like the people that were in my life that were narcissistic, I send them love and light. I don't wish any bad on them.
Absolutely.
I also, like you said, it's like, in some people believe in some ways they don't really know what they're doing. I think that they do to some degree know what they're doing. I
could see how calculated it was. Yeah.
It's a part of what they were trained and how they were raised and what they learned. Right. And as Sharon also said, it's about control. They have to have control because they didn't have control in their life. But I also realize what they came from, and I can see the humanness side of how they got to where they were going.
And
but
I
also don't have to, and you made it well, but I also don't have to condone what they're doing. They're still responsible as an adult for the decisions that they're making because they understand right or wrong. If somebody would do that to them, they would say it's wrong. The only problem is they
I gave them a chance. I told them, hey, this hurts my feelings and this is how I feel about it. And this doesn't seem right. I did give them a chance to be honest, and they couldn't meet me in the energy. And that just sort of decided it for me. Like they're kind of into their game and they want to keep playing. And that's okay. Yeah. It's just what I want to do. And some of the other family members don't either. And that's I don't even have to judge it. Like I'm free. All I know is I'm free from it now, which is awesome.
Exactly.
I got like a lot more soul's wisdom gained from it. But like I said, it's almost like this whole, it was almost like the tower card, right? Where I had this whole tower built. And when one brick was pulled out and the tower started to crumble, all of a sudden I could see it through the conspiracy theories. Then I saw it in these past relationships. Then I saw it in these family relationships. Then I saw it on a political level. Then I saw it over here. Then I saw it spiritually. Then I saw it in my life, my work. Like all of a sudden the tower just crumbled down.
Yes.
Which again, it's the freedom, it's the surrendering, and it will be rebuilt, from a phoenix, from a flame, from a much better place, but from a more pure place and from a fifth dimensional consciousness now as well.
Right.
So if I do it and I'm a microcosm of the macrocosm, if I'm doing it in myself, I really don't prescribe to going out and saving the world. It just seems like a big waste of time and, a real big hassle. But from a microcosm point of view, but when I was little, I thought saving the world was a really good thing, and I don't. But, bottom line is it's like, wow, if I'm waking up to the truth and I'm holding this in the collective, at least for myself, not with this one particular subject, but with the whole theory, the whole energy that our planet must be waking up on a big level. And you can see it internationally, people waking up and saying, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. Whatever game we've been playing, I don't want to play it anymore. You can see it with Black Lives Matters. You can see it with Me Too. You can see it everywhere. People are like, yeah, no more gaslighting here. I'm tired of being treated this way. You know?
Well, I hear you on that one. No more. I see any red flags, I'm out, man. Faster than I
No,
can blink.
yeah.
But I feel like more and more people are experiencing it, and more people are also seeing it. And that's what's really important, because that's what's going to bring more awareness and be able to make change, right? If people can see it and they understand what the symptoms are and how to deal with it and walk away from it way sooner than 30 years and plus, then you're doing good.
Yeah.
So it's really important, especially as a parent. I think it's important to, because we all have human traits and we're all going to do things. We're not perfect. We're all going to make, I mean, my kids will tell you I made some really big mistakes, but I always loved them and they knew that I always loved them. I was always their cheerleader and they knew I was their cheerleader. So it's being able to understand what a healthy relationship is and what's not, and being able to raise your children in that. And we love our kids, so we want to raise our kids to the best that we possibly can. And that's where it starts, is changing the generation below us and making that difference for the whole world.
Yeah, and standing up to something too. You know what I mean? Like there's a point where in your waking up, you begin to gain the wisdom and the consciousness to have different actions in your own energy, where you do get to kind of stand up for yourself. You know what I mean? And I know here in Portland, I'm in Portland, Oregon, and one of the articles I just read this week was, you know, obviously like we've maintained the protest here, you know, so the protest of Black Lives Matters is a very big one here, standing up for that higher cause just across the board. But one thing that they've said was recently that in the protest, there was tear gas and there was flash bombs and things like that. So they started wearing gas masks and they started doing things to protect themselves. Well, then it got to the point where it escalated to where they were just kind of using the billy clubs and they were coming out and being more violent, right? So the moms, I just love all the moms in Portland here. This is called the moms, and the moms kind of create this like, you know, barrier with people. Well, I guess they kind of came at one of the moms. They've continually come at the moms, but this was one this week. And so what everybody did was they, as the police officer, the federal agent, whatever it was, kind of came in, everybody surrounded them and said no more. And they actually were able to take the billy clubs away. They were actually, they actually broke, perhaps even with their own body, but they did break all of the weapons that were coming at them. And they're realizing that as they are standing up as a unified field, it's not just one person waking up. And that's my whole point, is like there is a waking up happening where we're realizing that when we come together in this unified field of energy and we wake up together, it's like whatever the oppression is at that time, or the misaligned energy or belief system or thought form or gaslighting, whatever it is, it's like when we stand up together, it's like, it's so cool because for one, we're not alone and we realize we're not alone.
Exactly.
It's where the unified field theory really kind of comes into play in a positive element, and it creates change without violence. You know what I mean? Create change. Because none of the protesters in this particular one were not provoking. They weren't doing anything that was violent. They were using they actually just enfolded them. They totally encircled them and they flipped them out and they went back inside the police precinct. They just totally encircled them.
I love that.
They did, and it flipped them out.
I love that. Well, we're in for a very interesting future, I think, for a while, because as we can all feel it in the energy, things have got to change in the world we live in. It's just got to change. So we're in for an interesting, I think, couple of years.
And there's just one last point that I want to make, and it's kind of coming in more from a little bit of an angelic level, is that in terms of conspiracy theory, one of the very common ones out there, and I'm using this more metaphorically, but the sense of there being a dark state or a dark cabal, and a dark alien race, etc. And again, I'm not disagreeing with that, right? But what I know in our psyche is we tend to mimic things that are already there. And I'm going to use myself as the example. So with my father having mental and emotional illness and alcoholism and all kinds of stuff, I really saw him on some level. I was afraid of him, and I saw him as kind of a dark force in a way. You know what I mean? And whenever we have parents we can't trust, or parents that are lying or sexual abuse, whatever the story may be, on any side, then my psyche, you have to imagine the psyche is very symbolic. Like, it's like we're walking this world thinking it's real, but it's kind of a dream state. So the psyche is very interpretive. So now if somebody wants to tell me that there is a dark force, dark entities, dark state, deep state, dark cabal, my mind immediately says there's definitely one. And again, I'm not disagreeing. I'm not totally disagreeing with that. But what plays upon me, and this is where I don't appreciate it, I don't want to be played upon it. But where it plays upon me is that how many people feel like maybe they couldn't trust a parent, or that there was something, kind of off, there was something going on there, right? And so the darkness that sometimes I think we see in these videos, if you'll notice what is your trigger, oftentimes, if you think of it symbolically as a trigger in your childhood, it'll match.
I agree.
So, I mean, like if you've been sexually abused as a child, then you might really identify with Pizzagate and the child pornography one, right? And there is a ton of those videos out, but I think there's also a ton of people who've had sexual abuse. For me, the ones that get me is the dark energy and this dark power that has power over me. But that matches my childhood with my dad, who had emotional illness, and I could see entities coming in and out of his eyes whenever he would go into these dark places, right? Anyway, if you notice whatever it is that is your trigger, the one that emotionally catches you the most, because you'll be like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And you're like, oh, that one is the one I'm really attached to. Look at the child to see if there is a mimicking on any level as to why your unconscious would have emotion about that, maybe over all the other things you're seeing. So
no, I appreciate that, because it really goes to what you think you create. What you think is what's in your history, what's in your mind, what's in your experience. And so I think I agree that will trigger us, and we all have our triggers. And then we're more fearful of that. So that's a good point. I choose to not really meddle in the world of darkness and, and all of that. I choose to more deal with the light and the goodness. But that doesn't mean that the other isn't there, because we know this world is a world of polarity, of contrast. So I hear you. And thank you to the angels that
might be being made wrong, might be, whatever it is. Like, they'll just be a catch in there somewhere for you. Like if it's watching the news, or it's that partnership, or it's that conspiracy video, there'll be something. Just look for what your hook is, your emotional hook. And that's where you will find your intellectual vices that is keeping you enrolled in that story. And it just like all unravels once you start putting all this together. It just unravels like it's happening. And the tower of how you think does collapse. It's a little uncomfortable, but the freedom and the light and being on track with your life and the happiness and the joy and the hopefulness that comes on the other side of it is so worth it.
Exactly. I have to chuckle at this, and I'm going to throw it out there because I agree with you. Sharon said she's avoiding getting into another relationship because of her patterns. And that's, that's a whole nother subject, and we're not going to go down that road, but it is a really good statement, because you just have to do your work to understand what your triggers are, and be able to work on those triggers so you don't see them and make those mistakes. But also, our greatest learning comes from the relationships that we've had. In fact, I wouldn't change the direction that I have had in my life, because it's created who I am. And I love what I know now. I love the experiences that I've had. I don't think I would go back into another relationship for a very long time, if ever in this lifetime again. And I'm happy and peaceful where I'm at. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't, if it was the right relationship to teach me what I need to learn, because we're each other's teachers. We learn from each other. So I get what you're saying totally, Sharon. But that's a whole nother topic we'll have to talk about one day. Because we can go for hours on that one.
I'm going to throw this out there. that because of the gaslighting, because of this family member, because of how it programmed me, because of my vulnerabilities, because I picked those type of relationships, I did learn a lot on a soul level. But once I unfolded it, once I saw it for what it was and why I was doing so many things and why I was picking the kind of partners I was picking, what happened is that it cleared my karma. So now I feel like as I move, if I choose to move into a relationship, whether it's friendships, partnerships, business relationships, whatever, I don't feel like I'm doing it from the same karma I was doing. So when you unravel some of these core things that we happen to be talking about in this particular call, right, you might find that you complete a karmic life cycle, that you actually can start creating relationships now based on your dharma, your joy, your happiness, a more sense of unconditional love within yourself and others. And so again, it's well worth doing the work to unravel this. And like I said, you needn't be afraid of a relationship of whatever kind it might be, because once the karma is sort of cleared about it, it's done.
Okay, we're going to wrap this up because we're already an hour and a half, but it's so funny. She said she hopes in the next relationship, if there is a next, that she figures it out within the third date. I'm like, no, you figure it out when you're talking on the phone and you're listening to your body and you're feeling like, there's something really wrong here. There's not, or, oh yeah. Well, then you may give him another date. But after that, it's like, I don't know. I'd go 3 dates.
One of the rules of thumb they say about dating is that you want to give somebody 6 months to a year, not to get caught up in the limerence, which is like that in-love chemical feeling that we tend to have and make a whole bunch of plans up front, or you're the one kind of thing. What you really want to see in somebody is you want to have life experiences that are kind of challenging. Because you see, gosh, how do they handle their family? How do they handle a money issue? How do they handle a health issue? How do they handle being in traffic? Because actually in the not in love moments or in love things you have in life, that you end up seeing a little bit more about the person and what you'll get once the limerence, what the in love chemical sort of sensation sort of fades. And so if you'll give it enough time, it's really worth loving yourself enough, being unconditionally loving to yourself, to give it time to say, wow, this in love feeling or the attraction or the whatever is going on is awesome. And I'm going to give myself that 6 months to a year to really get to know myself with you and you with me, to see if all avenues kind of show up before I make any commitment at all.
See, Sharon, you're already better than I am, because I would have just stuck at the phone call. Now you know that you have at least 6 months to a year to be able to test it out without getting emotionally attacked. Yeah. But seriously, with that being said, one of the things about narcissistic behavior is that they vet people against each other. So they will take the person that they were with prior and make them this really terrible person. And you think that you're special because you are not these things, right? And that's a big red flag. And so I was talking to my husband one time and I said, if you really wanted to have a good relationship next time, you would allow that person that you want to be with to come talk to me. He was like, I'm not going to do that. Well, that's a good sign, because they don't want anybody to know what the truth is. And if I would have talked to his girlfriend or his wife prior to me, then I would have ran the other way fast. And that's really an important thing. It's uncomfortable, right? To say, okay, I'm going to let somebody talk to my ex, because we all don't want that. But it's also a very important, you can get very important information. So
yeah.
That's one thing I learned.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Listen to what they say. Sharon, listen to what they say. If they're saying negative things and it's like a red flag to you, then pay attention. I want to thank everybody for being here. It's been fun. I appreciate, Adrienne, your bravery. We talked a little bit more about something that's very difficult to talk about. And I hope that you all were able to learn a lot from this. That's why this show is happening. It's to help people to think outside the box and to pay attention to things that are going on and around you, and question it and, pay attention to it. So, all right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Do you have any last words, Adrienne, before I say goodbye?
No, I am so complete with this whole call. Thank you so much. It was awesome. Thanks for the opportunity to bring light to all this. So, yeah.
All right, everybody. I'll see you next week. I put out in the universe I wanted to talk to an accountant, and next week we're going to talk about money and spirituality. I'm very excited. All right, everybody. Take care and have a good week. And thank you all for sharing. And if you have any comments, questions, please put it in the comment chat box, depending on which format you're on. I do look at them, and I'll catch you on the replay. Bye.